Oh, right in my ear.
Okay,
right
so
in my ear. Mosquitoes.
And all the mosquitoes. So,
And yes, I am protecting my ears with my shirt.
so you can't. Oh my God, there's a lot of them. Ah, there's one on my leg. Die, motherfucker ants. Okay, so.
Yeah, there's massive ants out here.
Dear God, they're everywhere. Okay.
So that was us trying to do a time-lapse tutorial and a time-lapse at Mount Baldy, but that didn't really work.
The time lapses came out well. Time lapses came out
very
well.
well.
But the tutorial was full of
Bugs.
lights going crazy, bugs going crazy, audio like crazy. So we're reshooting here up at Griffith Park, beautiful Griffith Park out in LA. This is a spot that we found a while ago, and it's one of our favorite places to film and take pictures from. So we decided we'd come up here and reshoot the time-lapse tutorial for you all.
Just for you.
Just for you. So yes, as you can read from the title above, this is a time-lapse tutorial. So we will be teaching you how to set up a time-lapse, what you need, how to process the pictures when you're done. You should be able to get a basic idea as to what a time-lapse is and what it involves, and be able to do one on your own. So here we go. What is a time-lapse? Now, when you're filming normally, you are filming 24 frames per second and you're playing it back at 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second or whatever your frame rate is. You're filming at the same rate that you're playing back at, so it matches. Now, let's say instead of filming, 24 frames per second, you're filming 1 frame per second, or you're filming 1 frame per minute, 1 frame per hour. Then you take those frames and you put them back and play them back at 24 frames per second. So now the frames that took 24 minutes now get played back in 1 second. So it speeds everything up. You get to see things happen a lot quicker. So that's basically what a time lapse is it takes this long amount of time and it condenses it down to a shorter amount of time instead of using a different frame rate of capture.
So what are time lapses good for? Time lapses can be used for, say, capturing stars rotating really quickly, clouds moving around really quickly, people moving around really quickly, or flowers growing really quickly, or buildings being built really quickly. Basically anything that would take a really long amount of time, compressed into a short amount of time, is good for time lapse.
Okay, so we've already set up the camera and the time lapse. To set up a time lapse, you really only need 3 main things.
3 things. Camera, most important thing.
Duh.
And then to set that, you need a tripod, or at least something to stabilize the camera. And 3, you need an intervalometer.
Now, intervalometers, don't buy the expensive one. There is no point in buying the expensive one. Get the cheap one. This one cost me $16. $16 for this. And it has lasted us for a while. We've done tons of time lapses with it. It works amazingly. Here's a couple tips for doing a time lapse. First things first, let's say you're doing a time lapse where your shutter speed's close to, let's say, 30 seconds. Now, you don't want to have to wait while you're trying to get your framing. Normally, if you're doing a time lapse that's a 30-second exposure, you're in the dark and you can't see anything on the back of your LCD screen. So what you do to fix this, so that way you don't have to sit and wait 30 seconds to get your proper framing, is you will bump your ISO up and then drop the shutter speed down to match. So that way you can get your framing with a shorter shutter speed but a high ISO, so you'll have a lot of grain. Get the framing you like, bring your ISO back down, and then put the shutter speed back at 30 seconds or higher. So that way you don't have to wait forever just to get your framing. And then you'll bring your ISO back down, you won't have as much grain in your image, and all will be good.
So another quick tip for setting up the camera for a time lapse, you want to make sure that the camera is in a place where it is never ever going to be hit by somebody or something that will mess up your shot. Another thing, you want to make sure that the camera is completely protected from the elements. So you want to make sure that no sand, no water gets on your camera and completely messes up your camera, your moneymaker, your holy grail of art. Oh, another thing, make sure you bring lots and lots of warm clothes.
Sorry, I'm cold. Protect yourself.
Yeah, protect yourself.
Not just your camera. Bring sweaters, bring jackets, bring hats, bring muffins.
Otherwise, muffins?
I meant to say something else. Mittens. Bring muffin mittens.
If you don't, you're going to be needing to protect yourself with a lot of vitamin C the next day.
Yeah. last tip. This one's a little bit more advanced. People are always asking, how do you do your exposure for when you're filming? Well, there's 3 ways of doing it. There's set and forget it. There's using automatic, where the camera's deciding everything. And then there's the one that everyone hates, which is kind of what we're doing right now, which is where you set it up and then you continually adjust the image as it's going. In fact, I'm going to make a little adjustment right now. So the first one, you are filming something like what we did for the star time lapse. We set it and forget it. We figured out what our proper exposure was. We left it outside and we let it roll. And we came out and the sun had come up and everything had gone to white. It didn't matter because we were just worried about the stars. So you set it, make it look good, and then if there's exposure changes within it, there's exposure changes within it. The automatic one, you set it to automatic. Now this is the most popular way of doing it. Set it to automatic and let the camera decide for you. The camera will make all the decisions and all is good and well in the world. And you come back, once you've been it into post, you'll see there's a little bit of flicker, easily adjusted with some levels. It's a little bit more work on the back end, but it still works. The last way of doing it, which is the way most people hate to do, is the way that we're doing it right now. And that is setting your exposure for the beginning and then knowing what you want to expose for. So right now, what I'm worried about is exposing for the sky. So it's getting a little bit dark, so I'm actually going to bring it up. I'm using the built-in camera meter just to test a little bit where, and I'm also using my eye a little bit to see what I want to expose for. In this case, it's the sky. So what I'm doing is I'm actually going in, and every couple of frames, actually a little bit more than every couple of frames, about every minute, I'm going in and I'm adjusting the exposure. So that way I'm personally making a creative decision for what the exposure is going to be for the entire scene. So that's the quick tips.
All right, and welcome to the part where we actually take those images and make a movie. So first things first, get the images onto your computer. I've already made a folder here, time-lapse stars, and I've got both the time lapses that we did for our Mount Baldy time lapse. Now these are the ones that actually came out and not the ones that we were shooting while we were up on top of Griffith Park. So something I do is I actually go in and I mark the very first frame of the time lapse, where it actually starts. Now the way that I know this is that I mark it with my hand. If you look in here, you can kind of see the outline of my hand here. So that way all the images before this, I'm just kind of scrolling up here, all the images before this are test images. You know, we are getting our framing and stuff. Now, you can see in here the grain's going to get really high, and that's when we bumped up our ISO like we told you in the little, there we go. We bumped up our ISO here so that way we didn't have to wait as long to get our exposure. So we made sure we had our proper framing while we were doing this. These are different framings that we were trying out, and you can see we really bumped it up. We were tired of waiting. And finally we got a framing we liked, and we bumped it back down. And there's the hand. So we know that this very next frame is the start of our time lapse. So what I can do is I can go in here and delete all the other ones. So now when it starts, it is just the images that are for our time lapse. So there are 3 different ways of doing it, or at least 3 different ways that we know of and 3 ways that we like, and first and foremost of which is actually doing After Effects. Now, I love After Effects. After Effects is great for a number of things, and in our case, it's actually the easiest way to make a time lapse. So with each folder containing each time lapse, you just drag and drop it into your project window and click on your time lapse and drag it into a Create New Comp button, and bam, you have your time lapse. It does not distort it, it does not crop it, and it is exactly what you want. And pressing Apple K or going composition settings, you can set your frame rate. Now we normally do 2397, 2398 technically, but it's 976. That's our normal frame rate, and well, we're at full resolution. We'll go down here a quarter so I can scrub a little bit easier. And even that isn't, as you can see, the stars are moving. So this is the best way of creating them, because now I can go back into my composition. No, wrong one. Go back into the composition settings, and I can change this to, let's say, an HDV 1080 comp. And again, we're going to have to change the frame rate back to what I want. And now the comp is exactly what I'm going to be editing with. So to get it to fit, I can just right-click. No, my mouse is acting up at me right now. right click, go transform, and fit to comp width. Now if I did fit to comp, it would actually distort the image, changing the aspect ratio. So if we do fit to comp width, we'll see that there's a little bit on the top and the bottom, and I'll scroll in a little bit. And what we can do now is we can actually go up or go down, reframe a little bit within, and I'm holding down shift so it goes up and down smoothly or without varying side to side. Now, this is scaled down. If I press S on the keyboard, we can say this is scaled down to 37%. Let's say we wanted to crop in on something. We just scale it up. And now, we're not losing any resolution. And let's say I wanted to reframe and I wanted to make it about this tree that's over here. You can't really see it because we're down at quarter resolution. But now you can move it around, reframe, and to get it to fill up your entire frame, again, go transform, fit to comp width. From here, composition, add to render queue. Render it out with whatever settings you like, and you are done. Second way of doing it, which gives you not as many options, but at least gives you a final movie to start editing with, is if you go down to QuickTime, which is actually QuickTime Player 7, you're going to go File, Open Image Sequence. Now what you're going to do is you're going to navigate to the image. Now it doesn't matter which image you click. So navigate to any of the images within the sequence and click Open. Select your frame rate, click OK, and wow, that is a big movie. Let's go ahead and set this to fit to screen. F3, learn your keyboard shortcuts. So F3 to fit to the screen, 0 to make it half size, 3 to fit screen. And from here, you can go File, Export, and you've got all your typical options. Once you go into Options, your settings, and your size. I really wouldn't play around with your filter. And this will give you the full quality movie that you can start editing with. So go ahead and cancel, and we'll exit out of this. Now, let's say you don't have After Effects and you don't have access to QuickTime 7, or you can't find a good way to get it online. There is always, of course, going into Final Cut. Yes, we love Final Cut. We don't like Final Cut Pro X. Final Cut 7. There we go. Now, first things first, you actually have to, there's some downfalls of doing it within Final Cut. And I'll try and highlight these. Really avoid doing it within Final Cut, but it is possible. And I'm going to highlight some of the issues with it. First things first, we need to go into the user preferences, go to the editing tab, and change our still freeze duration to 1 frame. So that way any still image we bring in only lasts a frame. Makes sense, doesn't it? So click OK, make sure that that's there. Go import folder, and we'll import our folder. And it's going to take a second to scan all the files. But now that we've set it up, we can easily just drag it in. But wait, don't do that. First things first, let's make sure that our sequence is at the right frame rate, which it is not. Now let me show you what happens when we drag it in. It's not the right frame rate. I'm going to have to render the video. Give me a second. Be right back. Alright, I'm back. Now there is a reason why we wanted to change our sequence settings beforehand. Now if we do Apple 0 or go sequence settings, you can see that we no longer can change our editing time base. Now why this is bad for us is you cannot nest sequences of different editing time bases within Final Cut. So if you want to not have to export anything out, we'll have to delete all of this stuff. Apple 0, or again, sequence settings, change our editing time base to what we want, 2398 or 976 if you want to get technical, and then re-drag in our comp. And again, I'll see you in just a second after this renders. Alright, that rendered. Now, as we can see, we have the right frame rate, which means that I can take this sequence and drag it and drop it into another sequence without having to actually export. So there's a little bit beneficial of that, but let's also look at that frame size. Now we shot these at full large on the Canon frame size, which is a couple over 5,000 pixels, which Final Cut actually won't handle natively. Final Cut can't do anything over, I believe it's 2K, it might be 4K, but a little bit of an issue there. So, and we can also see that we have these black bars on the side. Now, if we look into one of these and go to the Motion tab, you can see that this is very heavily scaled down. Now, to scale any of them, or to scale them all, we'd have to scale up one. Zoom this out a little bit, go to 50%. Scale this, not very accurately. We don't know where it's at. Gonna have to go back into Distort and change that back to 0. Ooh, that's even wrong. We're gonna have to play with the distort, and then now I'm gonna copy this one, and I'm gonna have to go into here and right click and go paste attributes and paste basic motion and distort, and you can see where this is gonna be difficult. So I would not suggest doing it. I would suggest getting everything you can done outside of Final Cut, exporting it, and just handling with an actual movie file instead of a ton of still images. Because you want to make any changes, you're going to have to make it to the still images. Alright, that was another awesome possum tutorial from Rabble-House Productions. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more tutorials like this, please click on the subscribe button. It's the huge button in the middle of your screen right now. And if you're in the mood for clicking more buttons, please click the like button. And after you type in a nice little comment, click the post button. We hope to see you next week.